Make sure everything's clear. You're good to go.
All righty. Hello, everybody. How's everybody doing this day? I tell you, can I see some smiles? If you can hear me, smile at me. Can you hear me? Smile at me. Oh, yeah, look at the teethers. Look at the teethers. Well, my name is Wendell Fields. Oh, man. Woo, I like that name. Well, let me say it one more again. Wendell Fields. Oh, God, I felt that one in my big toe, y'all. I felt that one. And in this, you know what? I used to hate hearing that name. Why? Because I associated it with being in trouble. And in that, you all, one day a lady by the name of Philandra Johnson, who saw only the side view of me, and I was over there at the DeKalb Community Service Board serving one of our clients from another community service board. And she looked and she said, Wendell Fields, where you been, boy? And that, I never heard my name pronounced like that. And it just touched me. And so I said, I'm going to use that to introduce myself. But, you know, just because y'all want to be fancy today, you know, I got this for you. All right, y'all ready? 1, 2, 3, go. Oh, can't hear it. Can't hear it. Well, we're going to stop and we're going to keep on going. So, just look fun. Well, come on now. There we go. So, with all this good stuff, I just want you all to know that this is my contact information. Y'all can holler at the brother man and get in contact with him, okay? And so, just want you all to know that. Who am I? The brother man is a person in long-term recovery from depression and anxiety. In 2008, I tried to take my life through the use of suicide. And you all, it's been a journey. And in that, I'll share some more with you as we go throughout the presentation and everything. So as we look at this, I want to talk about what the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention talks about suicide prevention. It says suicide is death caused by injuring oneself with the intent to die. A suicide attempt is when someone harms themselves with any intent to end their life, but they do not die as a result of their action. So that's straight from the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, and we're talking about suicide prevention. Now, I'm going to talk about just a little bit of these statistics here. As you know, this is from the 2022 information, but they're updating as they go along and get the information. So I'm sorry for this particular showing of the statistics being what they are, but it says, you know, January of 2024, but just know that COVID set us back and a number of other things, okay? So here it is. Let's look at this. Georgia is the leading, the 11th leading cause of death in Georgia is suicide. In this, we have it being the 3rd leading cause of death for ages 10 to 24, 3rd in the ages for 25 to 34. It's the 5th leading cause for 35 and 44, and 6th, 45 to 54, 12 and 55 to 64, and 18th for everything above 86. Now, I find this interesting because here it is, we're talking about phases of life. And in this, do you remember when you were in kindergarten of all these? Can we remember back that far? Was it a lovely experience, ladies and gentlemen? I mean, that first day, the parents are like, okay, we love you. And they're gone. You know what? I didn't have a good day. In fact, I got anxious that day. In fact, I got scared that day because I'm wondering, where is my mom, my dad, and everything? And can you believe that people can experience anxiety even when they're 5 years old? So as we look at these ages, you can imagine the changes that the child is going through, the person is going through, that young man, that young lady is going through. And here it is, you get up to 10 and you get to 12 and boom, there's a change in the atmosphere, isn't it? Yes, the hormones raging, and the boys start feeling themselves, the girls start feeling themselves, and oh, the attitude, the mindset, how will we commune with one another, the social impact. I tell you, it's something about these things, right? And as you go through that change, here it is, you try to get prepared to go to college. And people think you know all there is about life. Can you imagine the pressure that's on you? I gotta perform, I gotta perform, I gotta perform, I gotta do, but yet I don't know how to do. And then you leave me in this world where I go to school, outside the state, in the state, at the university, online, I mean. And then when we graduate, you're supposed to know how, because now you got educated. And then you get to 35 and 40, and here it is, it's sort of like, well, I shoulda, oughta, coulda. And then when you get to 45, it's like, what have I done with my life? Have I connected with the right people? I mean, where am I? And then when you get to 55 and 60, it's like, where's my generation at? How do I connect with people? The music isn't the same, y'all. The dances that we did, what the world they doing now? Or the friends that we had, the family members, the people we associated are now dying. And I feel alone. Arthritis is coming in, all these medical issues are happening now. I don't want to be a burden to anybody. I'm tired myself of the pressure and everything. So when we get to 65 and over, we're tired. Can y'all relate to those things that I was talking about? And we wonder why it's so prevalent, suicide. As we go on, because I know we got things to say and things to do. Hey, look at these famous folks up in the camp. Oh yeah, do y'all know anybody up in the camp?
Yes.
Who do you know? Who do you know?
That was the guy from Soul Train, Dr. Cornelius.
Oh, Cornelius.
Oh yeah, Cornelius. I remember him.
So, Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Who else do we have?
Which the dancer, man, that broke my heart like so bad.
Oh.
But yeah, he's awesome, Twitch.
Okay. Who else do we have that's right around the corner here? Anybody know anybody else? Y'all don't know Miss USA?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I like she was a model or something, but yeah.
Y'all don't know Mr. Ivan, Regina King's son?
Oh, I didn't know that was her son, but I did hear about her son.
We don't know about Miss Walters, who made the us on one of the networks. Y'all don't know? Okay. Y'all don't know the good old Jackson right there? He was NFL receiver for a number of teams. What do they all have in common? They famous, right?
They completed suicide.
You said it right.
Mhm.
They all chose to take their life. Now, I want to do this. And I want to show you all or speak about just a number of things. Ivan Alexander, he was a musician and a DJ. And guess when he passed at 26 in 2022? Charles Johnson, wide receiver, died in 2022. Switch, a DJ and dancer from Allen Talk Show, when? 2022. Kelsey, beauty queen in the Miss USA pageant and was the winner. Here it is us with Miss Jazz Walters and Don Cornelius from good old Soul Train. But it doesn't matter how old they were. It didn't matter what was going on that was success to other people. For some reason, it just didn't happen for them. And they decided to take their life. Now, I will talk about the forms of how they did so, but we got to keep on going, all right? In this, hey, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says suicide rates increased 37% for Black people 10 to 24 years of age, the highest rise of any category from the category of 2018 to 2022. How about that? In 2021, the suicide rate among Black or African Americans, the people was 3.6 higher than in 2020. And look at the totals of deaths just in the Black community. And then look at the percentage as far as college and university. About 34% of the students was taking their life. And I know I'm focusing right now on African Americans, but what do you think is happening to other people as they get on that pressure, as they try to deal with societal norms? I love this one. Okay, I'm gonna go in on this. Let's see how we can make that thing happen, and so we can see it real good. How many people know about ACEs?
Yes. Mhm.
Adverse childhood experiences. That's one thing, but yet, what about the adverse community experiences? Oh my, and what about the environmental things that's going on? So as we look at this, and then as we look at the household, that's that first community we were talking about. Hey, what happened if the parent is incarcerated? What happened if they're divorced in the family? What happens if they're alcohol use or drug abuse? What about the bullying? Yeah, those things can change a person's mindset because the trauma of it. And then the continuance of it, day on a day on a day, it can cause that cortisone as the stress hormone. And that produces more and more of health issues. So then we got to look at the good old community adverse conditions as far as discrimination, violence, the lack of social capital and mobility, poor water, air quality. I tell you, food is not enough, a lack of jobs. And we're talking about the community. But then number 3, you all, the environment. So war can have an effect on that. When we have tornadoes, that has an effect. When we have hurricanes, we recently talked about and heard earthquake. These things causes stress and more for the individual and the community. So there it is, some risk factors. Hey, experience of racism, higher rates of unemployment, which we talked about. We talked about financial and food insecurity, the disparities in other aspects of health, limited access of care. And what academic, because we're a little bit older and we want to go to college and get that degree, but yet it's still economic stresses with that, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Stigma, according to a public opinion poll conducted in the 1990s, 63% of African Americans believe that depression was a personal weakness, and only 31% believe it was a health problem. How about you all? Do you think that has changed? Is it the same? And then, another is the mistrust of the system. Anybody heard of Tuskegee,
Experiment?
yeah?
Yeah.
You think that didn't cause African Americans to really believe in the system? And if they can do that to them, what else can they do to everybody else? Beliefs. Your experience counts, your cultural tradition counts, even your formal education counts. Because as you know, that the older generation got a certain type of education that doesn't explore more of the current stuff. So their mindsets, even though they got education. Yeah. Culture. Oh yeah, culture can be defined as shared patterns of behaviors, interactions, thinking, and understanding that are learned through the groups that we belong to and identifies that we hold. Identities that we hold. Belonging to a culture impacts our health choices, our behavior, our values, and who we go to for support. We were talking about that upstairs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what causes or what we think is good health and what is bad health. Some protective factors. Hey, having that resiliency. Are we taught it? Do we learn it? Or is it that we look and observe and we gain it from the community that we live in? But yet sometimes it's faulty because it teaches us possibly to use drugs and alcohol, sex, premature, the whole thing. So, hey, we gotta have the right form of resistance, healthy problem-solving skills, awareness and access to the physical and mental care, the cultural or religious beliefs that encourages or discourage suicide, protective factors, positive peer relationships, safety. Those things make a difference in people's lives. We already had mentioned these on the most significant ones. Hey, connectiveness to individuals. Remember upstairs, I was trying to get that connection. We all were in a circle and everything, because it's something about that connection. Well, we have come to the part of my presentation that I just want to say that as a person who was born, I weighed 2 pounds, 10 ounces, and they already labeled me as having developmentally disability. And they said that I wouldn't grow well, I wouldn't do this, I couldn't do that, and I was a dummy. That's how I want to put it. And here it is in the 2 pounds, 10 ounces I went on. And with me not knowing who I am and what I'm about, how about at the age of 4, I was molested by both men and by women. And it brought a concept on my mind that I'm just a toy for someone. Not only that, my relatives beat me up and they stripped me of my clothes and they would kick me out the front door so that people can look at me and gawk. And you wonder why I dress the way I dress, because it's my layers to protect me.
Yeah.
In this, I went on, and in the 2nd grade, I got kept back. I was wondering what was going on with everybody. And I got bullied. And here we go to this high school stuff, huh? I remember plagiarizing out of the book because my grades were so low. And I plagiarized out the encyclopedia. And in this, I got an F on that project. But yet, the teacher allowed me to do it again with the assistance of a dictionary and a thesaurus. And I got an A. And that helped me to want to go to college. And so college, I graduated from high school and I went to Tuskegee University. Oh, yeah. I mean, Washington, you know, all that good stuff, you know. And I went there, but because of all the hurt and the pain I experienced, guess what? How much time I got?
Kind of over.
I'm sorry.
We got two more people.
I got you. All right, y'all. So anyway, I got kicked out of Tuskegee. I went to Oral Roberts, got kicked out of there because of the operation I had. And in that, you all, with the partying and all of that, I substitute. Usually I have a golden mask on right now. And I put the golden mask because everybody can relate to the golden mask. Oscar, shiny face, all of that. And that was my attitude. But inside I was hurting so bad and everything. So you know what? I got a job. Hey, I became a minister.
Wow.
Hey, I got married. I became executive pastor. And all these things are happening great, wonderful. Woohoo! But it was only a mask because I was still hurting and I didn't address my issues yet. These people changed my life. Kevin Hines, he's told his story and I was able to identify. And here it is that Teresa Johnson, my supervisor, she talked to me. And guess what? She identified with me. She let me know it was okay to be not okay. And she encouraged me to go to see my doctor. And that's why Dr. Earl Thurman is there. And he listened to me unconditionally, you all. And in this, they made a difference in my life. But I started this recovery thing at 2018. All the way back to 2002, I was trying to white knuckle it and not take meds because I had a bad experience. Therapy, I thought it was a coming to America issue in which they said, hey, whatever you like to talk about. That's what I thought therapy was. And so I said, screw all of that. But I tell you, these organizations here, they have really helped me to bring out this inward person who shares with you everything about me and being vulnerable to others. Just a couple of resources there for you. And you see good old NAMI is right there. But other things are there too, because different strokes for different folks. And just because it might work for me, it might not work for you. So you have to put your tools in your bag to make sure you work on the different things. Other resources for you that you can connect with and join. But the main thing I just want to say is that this book, Grace for the Afflicted, remember he was talking about Matthew S. Stafford. This is the book that really helped educate me on spirituality working in. So just know that these things are here. I got an end, but let me tell you, it's the best thing I've ever done with revealing that I do have a mental health condition and getting the help with it. and to know what's out there to go to
Mhm.
help with it. So it doesn't matter if you black, white, green, purple, get connected with the resources that really are out here. I provided some out here. They really do help. Let the pride go and let the fear go. Because when you do that, big things really do happen for you and safe to do in those environments. Just connect. Hey, I thank you for your time, and just know that NAMI, we're always here for you. And know that also, I got to put this plug in. The Behavior Health Link or the Georgia Crisis and Access Line is always here for you. Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you. Good job. So I can go last because I definitely want to make sure two presenters go. So if Roland, if you would like to go next and share.
Sure.
We can't hear you.
He's not talking.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
I'm
Roland,
just pulling
get that.
my,
7 minutes, just to know.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Roland. I really am.
no, I was given 7 minutes, so I'm right on time. You're right on time. It's all good. Yeah, by way of introduction, my name is Roland Bain, and for a number of years, I was a member of the board of directors of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention's Georgia chapter, and had the good fortune of chairing the board for a couple of terms. Today, and also as Kim had noted this morning, I am the father of a young man who at the age of 29 took his life. He was an individual who was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. He also has had some additional challenges in terms of OCD. And though I miss him every day, he never really left me. But pleased to be here and wanted to talk about DEI in the context of intersectionality. And I think more than anything, perhaps suicide is an area that is unique to each individual, but common to many individuals. And we're going to show that in the following few slides. So intersectionality is a theoretical framework that acknowledges the interconnected nature of social categorization such as race, gender, class, sexuality, and ability, and then how they intersect to shape individual experiences of privilege, discrimination, and oppression. And I just put up about 10 or so elements of intersectionality. There are more than that, but as you can see, when you think about it for a minute, if you stop, how do you define yourself? What categories do you put yourself in? There are multiple categories. Some of them that may be unique to you or to a limited group of people. Some that may be broadly applicable. So anywhere from race to age to health to sexuality and gender identity. All of those are various elements of intersectionality, and all of those that enter into the issues relating to suicide. Quick sort of oversight. Wendell was sort of talking about this in his message, that what you see here is called the interpersonal theory of suicide. You see that Venn diagram. You see that where you have perceived burdensomeness. So I am a burden to family or friends, and then thwarted belongingness, right? I don't fit in anywhere. I'm alone. Well, when those two intersect, you have that desire for suicide. You may have suicidal ideations. You may even make plans, but you really need the capability for suicide in order for you to move from ideation and plans to a suicide attempt. And in this context, capability for suicide refers to desensitization of fear and pain, and that's brought on through repeated exposure to painful or provocative experiences, like Wendell was talking about, right? Those could be ACEs. Those could be experiences where you know, become divorced perhaps, or where you lose a job that you've had for a long time. You know, you have pain that arises, and it's mental, it's emotional, at times it can be physical. But when the three of those intersect, then that's when you have the possibility of a suicide attempt. Uh, we want to clearly distinguish between suicidal thoughts, suicidal ideations, if you will, then suicide attempts, and then completed suicides. And they work in the following manner, sort of reverse. So for every suicide that is completed, there are about 25 to 30 suicide attempts. For every suicide attempt completed, there are over 200 individuals who struggle with serious thoughts of suicide. And so while you may see a number of, 49,000 or so in terms of suicide deaths, when you start realizing that in many instances, there are hundreds of people out there that have struggled and have not made an attempt. What we believe is that there are approximately each year 16 million people of all ages who have had serious thoughts of suicide, who have made a plan, who have made an attempt, and then some of them have completed, unfortunately. I wanted to just sort of throw these things up because once again, like this this intersectionality, just to sort of let you know that you can sort of look at suicide through many different lenses. And so on the right hand, what you see are male and female suicide rates by race and ethnicity. You can see sort of working it down that the highest rates on a measurement per 100,000 population are for a non-Hispanic American, Indian, and Alaska Native, both on male and female. And then second, non-Hispanic white. Third, you see on in men, it is non-Hispanic Native American or Pacific Islander. But you can see how, as you sort of roll through these, you have significant variances between races, between genders, especially. And while men are more likely to die by suicide, as many of you all know, women are more likely to have serious thoughts of suicide and to make an attempt. The distinguishing characteristic, we believe, between women and men in terms of much higher suicide completion rates is that men are much more likely to use a firearm. And a firearm is the most lethal means by which you can choose to take your life. In Georgia, almost 2/3 of individuals who die by suicide do so by using a firearm. So that's one element, right? You can sort by race and by gender. If you look at the sort of bar chart in the upper left, what that is saying is let's sort by degree of urbanization. A lot of people tend to think that maybe the big cities are where you're going to have the highest rates of suicide, but in reality, the big cities are where you're going to have the lowest rates of suicide. You hear about it more because there are more people, but in terms of taking a rate per 100,000 individuals, the highest rates of suicide are going to be in our rural areas. And while we don't know exactly why, we believe that a number of reasons could be one, a lack of connectedness. Maybe it's, you're far from, from other folks or other folks who may be like you. Two, you may not have access to healthcare and especially behavioral healthcare if you're out in rural areas. Three, you may not be able to sort of, once again, readily access the care. Or four, recover quickly from, say, a job loss. If you have an industry that makes up, a company town, if you will, right? If that company goes under, you don't have the opportunities that may exist in a larger city to find alternatives. Then at the bottom left of the map, that's just sort of segmenting again by a geographical area, but this time by states. And the darker it is, the higher the suicide rate. And as you can see, the highest suicide rates are in New Mexico, Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, and Alaska. There are a lot of potential reasons for this. Some even speculate realistically that it is a function of oxygen deprivation, because this is where you're going to find the Rocky Mountains. And what you have in the States, in addition to high altitudes, you have a lot of rural communities, you have a lot of access to firearms, you have a number of other things. In fact, the U.S. Army is studying it because when they send their troops for training up in mountains, they're tend to see historically over sort of 20, 30, 40 years, higher rates of depression among the individuals who had then done that high altitude training. So this is just designed to say, you know, look at all of this, right? I can segment this by any sort of measure, and it's going to have an effect on the suicide rate. As Wendell was saying, between 2018 and 2021, suicide rates rapidly increased among non-Hispanic, Black, or African American populations, both ages 10 to 24 and 25 to 44. They also increased among non-Hispanic, American, Indian, and Alaska Native populations, increasing by 33.7%. And as you remember, they're at the top of the list in any event in terms of highest suicide rates. Non-Hispanic multiracial populations increased 20.6%. Hispanic populations, 19.4%. And what you saw here, with the exception of the measures for non-Hispanic, American, Indian, Alaska Native, is significant increases in populations that historically had been much lower in terms of suicide rates. Now, suicide rates are still lower among the Hispanic population, the Black, but the rates of increase over the last sort of 5 to 10 years have been extraordinarily troubling. And people need to be doing more, and they're trying to do it, but knowing more about trying to understand why in this particular segment, the suicide rates have increased. And as Wendell was also talking about, right, it's not just sort of a function of an individual. It may not be a function of their family completely, although the families enter into it. But it's a function of where you live, the environment in which you grew up. What did you have access to or not have access to? So what are the social, economic, cultural, and historic factors that contribute to the disparities? And one of those may be a lack of culturally competent mental health services, that you have groups who, you know, guess what? If they have access to mental health care professionals, that's a blessing, but it's not a blessing necessarily as much as it could be if you had individuals who looked like the people going to the mental health professionals and they felt comfortable in being open and honest and in working to address the real reasons and concerns about them. It's a function of not having access to mental health services. And so while many people will tell you that, oh, well, suicide, 90% of the people had a mental health illness, I'm going to tell you to back away from that. Mental health is probably the biggest risk factor in terms of suicide. However, the CDC has shown that over half of individuals who complete suicide do not have a diagnosed mental health illness at the time. And you can say, well, that's because they don't have access to care. Nonetheless, we don't want to sit there and say just suicide is a function of mental health, when we know that suicide is a function of a variety of things, including the ACEs, the adverse childhood experience. It's a function of, you know, trauma as you've grown older, things that you've experienced. So when you combine all of the things that you have or don't have, which is like access to resources, education, employment, affordable housing, right? Then you're going to be seeing these higher rates. And it's not something where if we can just sort of tweak one thing, like if I could eliminate mental health or mental illness, that wouldn't mean that we would automatically go down to 0 suicides. Unfortunately, there are a lot of challenges that push on individuals. It requires then a multifaceted approach to understanding and addressing the problems. We need to see and understand the intersection of systemic inequalities and socioeconomic disparities, because marginalization, discrimination, limited access to resources, they all exacerbate the feelings of hopelessness and despair. of making one feel alone, of making one feel a burden, that might lead someone to think, plan, or attempt to take their lives. And then cultural stigma. It's around every one of us, right? We'd like to say it's gone and it wasn't, it's no longer there, but we know that to be incorrect. We know that stigma continues to exist, stigma around mental health, stigma around suicide, stigma around people who have, survived suicide attempts. So dealing with that cultural stigma, moving forward so that we get to a point at some point in the future where there need be no shame in anyone's game about what is that their life has brought to them. What it is not what did you do wrong, but what happened to you, right?
Well,
and when we can get to the point, yeah.
I am so sorry, but our speaker,
Yeah.
our next speaker has to leave. Do you mind pausing for a moment so that Dr. Patel could talk?
Oh, absolutely. I'm sorry, Kim.
Okay, thank you.
No,
No,
yeah.
come on, that's why you're here to share. Yes.
Ron, I'm so sorry. I didn't want to take it away. But I
No,
have
no,
to
no.
rush, go somewhere else.
Yeah.
I don't have slides because this was last moment for me. I wanted to come in and talk to NAMI about the Indian society and the suicide in Indian community. So I'll start out with a very different perspective that you might have not heard before, or you might have. But so in India, in the ancient India, there's two types of suicide: honorable suicide and a dishonorable suicide. And honorable suicide is someone who's a saint or a monk, and they've reached at a certain age or a certain spirituality, mature spirituality. They want to just leave the world. They want to leave their body and go to the next stage of their being, of the soul. So that's when they stop eating, they stop drinking, and eventually they die. This was practiced in ancient India. Now, the modern version of the honorable suicide is like here in America, we root for causes. So people root for causes in India, they do demonstration. In the heat of passion, somebody will just stand up and they'll douse themselves with petrol or chemical, and they'll immolate themselves. This is the modern version of the honorable suicide. It's still looked at as, oh, he sacrificed his life. And there's another interesting fact that I want to bring up here, especially for women, that years ago in India, in ancient India, women used to just lit themselves on fire after their husband died. This was on the fire pyre of their husband. They would die with the husband because there's no purpose to life if your husband dies. So it's better to just leave this world with your husband. So this is the beginnings of suicide. And now in India, it's kind of the world is becoming a mix. So everything is about the same. So similar issues in India now, that there's adolescent population, which is committing more suicide because of the pressure to succeed or excel. And to kind of meet that pressure, they don't know what to do and they'll just commit suicide. There's a little bit, so American Indian population or Indian American population in America versus the population in India, there's a little difference. So in India, people commit suicide because of domestic violence. It's the number one cause for women. Women are committing suicide because of domestic violence. So a man gets drunk, comes home, beats up his wife, and she commits suicide. That's a very common scenario in India. The other reasons are poverty. There's a lot of Indian farmers committing suicide because the crop did not grow well that season. And now they have a lot of debt, so they'll commit suicide. Versus the population in America, the Indian population, it's the young ones who come from a foreign land, they're not able to meet the demand, they're not able to succeed, and they'll commit suicide. Having said that, I lost a very dear friend of mine in 2022 to suicide. And she chose not to disclose it to me that she was suffering from mental illness because of the stigma. And here I am a psychiatrist, and I live with that guilt that I could have helped my friend if I knew that she had mental illness. But that's the stigma in Indian society, is not to talk about mental illness, not to talk about suicide. And I got this firsthand experience. Because we're from the mental health profession. We like to talk to people. So I went and talked to the family. I talked to the neighbors in the community, Indian people especially, just to get an opinion of what they were thinking. The first thing the family told me is they do not want anybody to know that it was a suicide. Because in India, suicide is still considered, the dishonorable suicide is considered an act of shame. And I'm from a Hindu religion, so from a Hindu perspective, if you commit suicide, you suffer in hell for 60,000 years. This is mentioned in one of the Vedic scriptures in India. So the family did not want to talk about it. And then when I was talking to the people in the community, one of the ladies, she mentioned to me that this doesn't happen in our part of India. So it's the denial. That it doesn't happen to us, it only happens to others. So this is how us Indians kind of look at suicide as an act of shame, something to not talk about. But interestingly, there was no mention of mental illness in there. Now, this woman did suffer from a major mental illness, and that was a reason that she had suicide attempts before, and she this time completed the suicide. So from that perspective, I think what's important is to spread education in the Indian community. And an organization like NAMI is so important. When I go to the temples, Indian temples in America, we have health camps. They have all kinds of specialists there, but there's never a psychiatrist. Because we don't talk openly about mental illness. We don't talk about suicide. Yeah. And I've always looked at the health camps, and I look at the list of the specialists who's going to be there. And interestingly, there's never a psychiatrist. So I definitely like to connect with NAMI to get them to one of the Indian temples.
Yes, yes. Dr. Patel, I have to ask this question. I'm so sorry. I know the time, but how does your culture then perceive you as a psychiatrist? Because to me that I just am.
So I will tell you my story. I started out with my dad telling me you can do any specialty but psychiatry. Yeah, do not pick any specialty. Do not pick any other specialty but psychiatry. So I chose to be a psychiatrist.
Were they upset?
My dad tries to put it as she's a brain doctor.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Wow. There is a taboo. So I'm not a surgeon, I'm a psychiatrist, so I'm not good enough. And I know I meet a lot of people and they tell me, how do you even do this? I would hate to be a psychiatrist. And I'm like, wait until your family member gets diagnosed with a mental illness. And then you'll appreciate the field of mental health and psychology and counselors, therapists. And we don't go to therapists. I have friends who'll say, I'll talk to my neighbor, but they would choose not to. Yeah. Wow. So that's how I started with the field of psychiatry. And we're still, okay, she's a brain doctor. That's where we at.
Yeah. Thank you.
Wow, thank you.
Very much. That's another area.
And I would like to work with NAMI more. I'm sorry I have to run.
No,
Yeah,
thank
well,
you. Thank you for sharing.
And Roland, we got one more speaker, so
Oh.
just so you know.
Well, I don't have to go.
No,
as long as
Kim, I was
everybody
pretty
is
much at
sharing.
the,
Yeah. Go ahead, Roland.
I was pretty much at the end, so just go ahead.
Y'all sure, because I don't have to go. I just want to make sure everybody else goes. Yeah.
I'll
Yeah, 'cause
just,
we're already
let me
Yeah,
just
go
share
ahead.
one for
Absolutely.
Wendell.
Ooh.
Okay, and let me grab it.
You said for Wendell. Oh, let me get this thing. I'm ready.
You know his ACEs slide. This is
Mhm.
ACEs.
Wow.
And if you look at that chart, what that is the lifetime history of attempted suicide graphed against the number of ACEs individuals may have. And you can see if you have one ACE, you have a 2.2% lifetime chance of attempting suicide. And if you have 7, you have a 35.2% chance of attempting suicide. So just wanted to reinforce the correlation between the adverse childhood experiences and the reason why we need to spend as much time and effort as we can with our young folks, especially in the area of structural improvements to the lives and livelihoods they have. So that's it.
Just want y'all to know I did take this test and I had 6 out of the 7.
Yeah.
So it was interesting enough to know that when my attempt occurred, the thing that broke my back was financial security.
Yeah.
And in that, it broke my spirits. I just considered myself as a human ATM machine for my family. And yeah, so all those things that Roland was just talking about, it accumulated, and it was so much pressure that the only way I thought I could make it was to take my life.
Yes, thank you for sharing. I know I'm gonna try to do this in about 7 minutes. I'm turning my speaker back up because I have something to do within my presentation, but hold on, let me share my.
I can't hear.
I don't know, I mean, my speaker is going through the owl, which is why.
I think it's mine.
One of the things that I
Because you're gonna have.
Muted, gotcha. Gotcha. I don't know. Okay, I have muted.
It's the volume again. Remember what you did at the beginning?
with some of the stuff that's going on, when a person has decided to take their life, you can look for signs like they getting all their stuff in order, their business in order. The behavior might be, they talk about, so they become more religious, and they talk about not killing themselves, but life with God and everything. There's more to do with, the person may start going into using drugs more or alcohol more than usual. It can be they're not sleeping a whole lot. Those factors contribute to the person experiencing that feeling of, I just want stuff to end. And when you got the gun, when you have guns, when you have drugs, and when you have anger or depressed, it can, all those three things together, that lethal triangle, it causes a person to take their life, and being under the influence of a substance. You have the gun, only takes 3 to 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And to add to what Wendell was saying, Justin, look if they're giving away any of their prized possessions, things that are important to them, you want to look for that. Any type of drastic changes in their mood, like if you notice that they was normally a happy person and now they're isolating, they're withdrawing, they're crying a lot, you noticing they're being explosive. You want to pay attention to all of those signs, anything that's like deviating a little bit from the norm. But those are kind of some ways that you'll know, and some of it, even in the language that they use. If they're telling you things like, I feel like a burden, right? Or I'm tired. A lot of the times when people say they're tired, we're thinking they're just saying, oh, I want to go to sleep, right? Yeah. But dig into that a little bit more. Say, well, tell me what you mean by that. Because some people could really be saying, I'm tired, so I don't want to be here anymore. This life is not worth living to me anymore. So those are the type of things to look for, if a person is having suicidal thoughts and is thinking about ending their life.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're
And I've
welcome.
learned similar to that, they
Yes.
could be upset and then all of a sudden
Outside.
happy.
Yes,
Because
yes.
they've made the decision
Mhm.
to move on.
Oh,
Because
yes.
you would think it would be the opposite.
Exactly. So good point. Can everybody hear me out there in the crowd? Do I need to take myself off or unmute?
See the picture?
You're good.
I'm good. Okay, wonderful. So I'm gonna try to make this really quick because save on time. But again, we're talking about suicide in diverse communities, and I'm gonna talk about it a little bit because I'm in healthcare. I'm gonna approach it talking about how suicide affects physicians, how it affects our doctors. So let's look at this. Let's look at some facts about physician suicide. Okay, so according to the National Library of Medicine, male doctors have suicide rates as much as 40% higher than the general population, and female doctors up to 130% higher. Physicians and medical trainees face an epidemic in terms of mental health conditions and burnout. On average, more than one physician takes his or her own life every day. So that shows us that we are in a mental health crisis when it comes to all physicians, when it comes to our medical trainees and doctors. And physicians and trainees rarely seek mental health treatment. Why do you think that is? Before I move on to the next slide really quick. Can anybody tell me why they think that is? Yeah, go ahead, Wendell. Yes.
The thing about it is that they feel like people are coming to them and they should have the answers and they should be able to help the person to get well. They have the power.
Ooh, you hit it, Wendell. That's exactly what it is. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more in depth in the previous slides. So let's look at risk factors related to physician suicide. And when we're talking about risk factors, these are those factors that we know can increase risk for suicide to occur. One of those factors is that we know our physicians have readily available access to medications, right? Because they're doctors, they're physicians. And depending on their specialty, a lot of them know how to use that medication within lethal use if they want to end their own life. So that's a risk factor. Substance use. A lot of the times if physicians are engaging in substance use, we know that this increases and causes risky and impulsive behaviors. An environment of stoicism. Wendell, you just hit it. A lot of the times physicians and medical trainees, when they're going through internships, when they're in medical school, they're taught, look, you a doctor, you can't show emotions like that. You got to be able to help people. You got to be able to make sure everyone else is all right, right? But rarely are they taught to make sure that themselves is okay. So it's that environment of stoicism. And then another risk factor is marital conflict. We know a lot of the times our physicians and medical trainees, they are working long hours that take them away from the home, right? And so we know that this is a risk factor because this can create marital conflict within the family. We also want to look at barriers for all physicians. And when we're talking about barriers, it's those stumbling blocks, right? That again will prevent all physicians from being able to really express how they're feeling. It's important to note that physician suicide is poorly understood. Research is still not really sure what is causing physician suicide. And not only that, it's not a lot of evidence-based treatment or interventions targeted specifically for all physicians and doctors. So that's a barrier. We got to put more research into this. Another barrier, physicians often struggle to identify depression and other mental illness in patients, colleagues, and themselves. Remember how we just talked about that environment of stoicism? If I'm a physician, I may be burnt out, right? But in my mind, I'm thinking, maybe this is just stress. It's not. But again, they're not taught to look at specific things in medical schools and when they're going through these internships. So a lot of the times they don't recognize it. And again, it's also hard for them to be able to recognize it in others. Lack of social support. I'm a physician, I'm a medical trainee, I'm in an environment where, it's really about competition. You see what I'm saying? I'm supposed to be the big dog, right? So it's really hard for me to go to my colleagues and say, hey, I really don't know this today, or I'm really not understanding something. So a lot of the times they can feel alone, they can feel isolated. We already talked about stigma. It's a big stigma surrounding mental health conditions and suicide, which will definitely prevent physicians from coming forward. And confidentiality concerns. A lot of the times, if I'm a physician or doctor, and I'm not going to really come forward and say anything because I don't want this to end up on my healthcare record, or I don't want this to affect my reputation. So confidentiality is a concern for a lot of our physicians. Let's look at protector factors, right? That can mitigate physician suicide. And these are those factors that can aid against suicide for all physicians. And one of those protector factors is conflict resolution skills. Having healthy communication skills, additional coping skills, and being able to problem solve, that's a protector factor. Family and community support. If I have the support from my family, if I'm involved in a community and it's doing something that I'm passionate about, whether it's volunteering at an animal shelter or volunteering at a food bank, all of these can be protector factors for physicians. Spirituality, we talked about that earlier, right? Feeling like you're connected to something higher than yourself and really having that support. We talked about the importance of physician self-awareness, being able to know when I'm depleted, when I don't have it to give, because when I don't have it to give, I'm not going to really be able to provide quality services. So physician self-awareness is important. And learning how to better balance and prioritize. It may be some days where I got to tell my supervisor, look, I can't work a 12-hour shift a day. I may have to cut this down to 5 hours because I'm feeling a little, not myself. So being able to prioritize and put those boundaries in place is really important when we're talking about those protector factors. So let's look at a small scenario really quick. We're going to talk about Christopher, and we're going to act like Christopher is a colleague of ours, right? So it says Christopher had a plan. The second-year medical student would plow his car into a pole. Christopher had just come from a disturbing conversation with the medical school dean, having failed a remediation course he was required to take. If he had to leave medical school, Christopher worried, he will humiliate his family and possibly harm other young marginalized people's chances of entering medicine. So let's suppose that as Christopher's colleague, he came to us and he told us this. How could we help him? What do y'all think? How could we help Christopher? What could we say to him?
Christopher, I'm sorry that you are going through so much. I didn't realize this. Would you like to share more with me?
Yes. Yeah, I love.
I'm listening to you, man, and I want to get the full experience because I might not be in that same situation, but I'm willing to hear, understand, and connect with you. Can I do that with you?
Oh, wonder, mic drop. That's exactly how we can help Christopher, right? We show empathy. We let him know, I'm listening, and we do it in a non-judgmental way. And then, like Wendell said, being able to connect him to resources, to let him know it's not hopeless. He's not alone, and there's resources out there that can help. So I love that you said that, because that's definitely how we can help Christopher.
And really let them talk.
Yes.
Cut them off.
Yes.
Because usually that's half the battle, because they're trying to form the words, get their thoughts out, so it's not jumbled anymore.
You hit it, Wendell. And I'm about to wrap us up. And let's just look at additional solutions that can address physician suicide, because we got to remember that when we're talking about suicide, we're not only going to look at it from an individual level, right? But we're going to look at it from a systemic level. How can we make systemic changes? And one of the ways is which physicians across all specialties should be taught to recognize signs of depression as well as risk factors for suicide, both in themselves and others. We talked about how that's very important. Training programs should have policies allowing time off for clinical duties due to accessing mental health services. So again, it should be embedded in training programs that if physicians need to take off a couple of days to take care of their mental health, they should be able to do that. Physicians should also be supported in implementing lifestyle habits to mitigate symptoms of burnout, including regular exercise, meditation, and maintaining a healthy social life. So again, being supported in all of these different avenues. And last but not least, professional organizations and governing bodies are also important change agents in terms of education and policy. So, a lot of the times our physicians and medical trainees and doctors, they have licensing boards that they got to adhere to maintain their licensure. And so looking at our licensing boards and some of the important policies that they can implement to make sure that our physicians and doctors are supported is vital. And last but not least, I had wanted to end with a short video, but I don't think it's going to play because I got to stay on mute because of how my speaker is being. But I just want to end it with saying this, right? When it comes to mental health, when it comes to suicide, it's really just about paying attention, even to the small stuff. A lot of the times we only think that, let me just pay attention to this big thing that's right in my face. But sometimes it's not just about the big thing that's right in your face. It's also about paying attention to those small little details that
The
can
monkey
also
business
help save a
illusion.
life. Oh, it's playing. Can y'all hear this?
Count how many times the players wearing white pass the ball.
So I want y'all to do that. Can y'all tell me how many times they passed the ball? The players in the white?
It was like 16 or
Yeah,
17.
that's what I was.
Okay. Did y'all get,
I counted 15.
15? Okay. Y'all notice anything else?
Yeah, I noticed the gorilla walking across the room.
Did anybody We wrapping up now. Did anybody else notice that gorilla?
Only because I just saw it the other day.
And that's it. Yeah, that's why I said paying attention to the small stuff. So that's what I wanted to leave us with. So thank you all for hanging out with us today. Yeah. It's important. None of the time. Let me see. Let me see. I'm looking at. Absolutely, Roland. Absolutely. Wow. Wow. Yeah. I mean, this is big stuff. This is big stuff. And I thank you all for being here with us today. I know we are out of time, but this was great. And I hope you guys took something away from it. So thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, I think everybody went over. Yep. Yes. Yeah. We got through, but we did it.